into three groups. I followed Preacher TK, and Amy followed Preacher Co, and then Jason remained in Nairobi to do the building work. So I'm going to talk about the building work, but I actually had nothing to do with it, and I'm not actually sure. I was quite unaware of a lot of things, so I'm not the best person to talk to you about buildings, but I will try my best. So when we went to Kenya in 2016, one of the things that we were doing was erecting a new building in Nairobi. So this is a church in Nairobi, Kariobangi, and the new building is actually a short walk away from this. So these are the lovely members, and this was on the last day in Kenya where we had a one-day working seminar for the workers in Nairobi. Because previously we had, at the beginning of the trip, we had a 2-week worker seminar, but they were unable to make it, so we decided to hold a special one on the last day. If you can please go on to the next slide. I think it's the next slide. Okay, so this, do I have the pointer pen? Okay, I'll just get it. Oh, this is it. Right. Right, so this is, when we came, they've already purchased the land and it's already flat and ready to build on. But, okay, before I say that, there's quite a lot of planning when it comes to buildings, of course. And one of the things that, and I think in the UK or in the Western world, it's very easy to think, well, actually, not quite so. Buildings are actually very easy to build up, but you have to keep in mind that we're in Africa. So things like transferring money is also a big issue. And we have internet banking, so it's quite easy to just like withdraw money. But the volunteers had to help bring money over from the UK to Africa, which means also going through customs and things like that. So each volunteer had to bring quite a sizable amount of money in their luggage. And for me, that's quite scary because I'm not a very responsible person, and given that amount of money, it's more than I've ever had before. It's kind of daunting. So that was the first thing. So there's a lot of planning, and you might think that when you're building in Africa, everything is so kind of I wouldn't say spontaneous, but you have to go with the flow, and then it's quite free. And you might think building a building is the same, but actually there's a lot of planning involved. And we spent the first several days basically staying in the hotel, and me and Amy didn't really know what was going on. And then local members would come to the hotel with the preacher, and then they would discuss plans and materials and all that kind of stuff, the admin side of it for the building. And it does take a lot of planning. Okay, so this is when they started to build it. If you go on to the next slide. Oh, that's not the, oh, sorry. It should be called Rachel 3. Is this Rachel 3? Okay. So this is, I'm just, oh, I will just show you the progression of the building. Right. So this is being built. Go on to the next slide. So yes, this is, if you think about it, from when I first came, there was no building. Everything was completely flat. And we spent 5 weekends there. So by the end of it, if you go on to the next slide, this is going to be a 2-story building. and it's really big. It's a really big building, 2-story, and there's going to be RE classrooms at the bottom. There's going to be a big chapel at the back. There's going to be a space for the mothers and the babies, and a little area where you can have your Bibles and hymn books. So that's from the inside while it's still being built. We go on to the next. Yeah. So you can see this is how quickly that they build in Africa. It's really quick. And I think it's a miracle as well. I really think it's a miracle because it's not easy, and especially in Africa as well, when you don't have all the machineries that you might have in the UK or in the Western world. And and that is Titus, who also helped accompany us. Let's just show. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, is there any more? I think there should be one more building. Is it Rachel? Is there Rachel 9? Is there one more building? Oh, it might not be saved as. Okay, that doesn't matter. But by the end of the trip, it was basically they were building the roof, and the inside all had the partitions, that had the rooms and everything like that. So one thing that I want to share about the buildings. Oh, you can go back to the previous slide. Thank you. So one thing that I did notice is that everything that happened with the building was documented. So all the material costs, everything had to be documented, and we spent a lot of time at the end going through all the receipts, going through all the documents, going through all the material costs and calculating it. And you might think that this is quite a tedious thing and that it's just very admin, but everything you need to be organized, especially when it comes to a building. And in Africa, because everything in our world is very technological and it's all like electronic. So when you have receipts, then you probably can get emailed to you, especially when it's concerning a building, and then you just tally it up on the computer. But I remember Preacher TK giving me all the receipts, and I'm using his iPad to take a photo of each receipt. And if you remember yesterday when Barry showed the pictures of the receipts, it's basically like that. You know, it's just a piece of paper with writing on it, and but even sometimes, you know, in Africa, they can even forge receipts and stuff like that. So it's not. In my mind, one point I was like, oh, do we really need to be this pernickety? But it's actually very necessary because even though it's not that we don't trust the members with the money, it's not like, oh, we'll give you all the money and you take care of the building. It's not that we don't trust, but everything needs to be accounted for, everything, and each person needs to be accountable for their own actions. So recording everything is very important, and it's not our money. This money doesn't belong to us, and it doesn't, even though it's AMC money, it doesn't belong to AMC. All this money belongs to God. So we have to be very careful with the way we use God's money. So this money doesn't belong to the preachers either. So they can't just use it however they want. They also need to keep records. And I always remember the preachers, whenever they spend something, they have to like take out the piece of paper and write it down as their own little receipts. And another thing is that, yeah, I really thank God that so many people contribute to offering to AMC, but it's also very important to encourage the members in Africa to offer as well, because not only will they gain blessings from the God, but from God. Right, but also in order to help the members grow, they also need to understand that they are responsible, and they God provides. If God provides for us, then God provides for them as well. So Preacher TK always encourage them to offer. So his sermons will would always mention this in his sermon. Um, let me. If there's anything else that I've missed out. Okay. So I can't think of anything else for buildings. Sorry. Okay, if we move on to pastoral, if you can go on the next slide. Right. So apart from erecting the building, we also went around visiting the members and the various churches. So we traveled to many places, and this is one of the members in Kumala Church, and we went to visit her. Oh, let me. So it's this lady, this elderly lady in the middle there. Her name is Saffrons. And she is an elderly sister and who can't really come to church anymore because actually you can't really see from that image, but she actually has lost one of her legs. And we went to visit her, and I remember listening to her story, and I was really touched because she is an elderly sister. Her husband passed away. All her children has moved away, so she's actually very isolated and very alone. But she sustains herself, or God sustains her. It's really amazing because she's lost one of her legs, but she still works. So in her garden or in her land, she plants. I want to say corn. I can't quite remember, but she has some chickens, and she plants and she grows her I think corn. And what she does, it's very hard to imagine what you could do. You can't really imagine how to function without a leg, but she would she can't bend down very well, but she would manage to make a hole. I think she has like a special stick that she makes a hole with, and then she uses her mouth to spit the seed into the hole, and then that's how she plants the seed. And she actually, once they grow, she goes down to the market or supermarket to sell her food. But obviously she's very old and she can't carry much, so she asks the little boy who lives next door to accompany her. So he carries the produce and then walks with her I don't know how long the walk is, but she lives in quite an isolated area, so it's quite a long walk. And when she gets to the marketplace, then she sells her corn. And I think it's just like a story from like a children's book, and it's really inspiring. And I think one of the lessons I learned from that is no matter, you think that you might be quite insignificant, like you don't have, you're very alone. Like she's this elderly sister who can't come to church because of her situation. She still prays at home and everything, and she's still very fervent. Her children aren't with her. Her husband isn't with her anymore, and she has to take care of herself. And there's no electricity. I think she has a solar light, but she doesn't have electricity or like running water and things like that. And she might feel very small and insignificant in this world, but God still sustains and protects her. And I really learned a lot from her, knowing that I really shouldn't complain because I have all my limbs and everything, and I've got running water, and I've got food. I can just go to the supermarket to buy corn. I still live at home with my parents, so like life is pretty sweet. So I actually, but I know that if trouble comes, then God will and I just need to try my best, but God will also provide. Okay, can you please go on to the next slide? Oh, that's okay. That's fine. So, jumping to my trip this year in Ghana. So okay, I might revisit Kenya. Sorry, I really am not structured at all. That's okay. You can go back onto that picture. Um, so I went to Ghana this last year in November. So I flew on the 29th, and then I arrived back um, Sunday morning with Tina. Tina testified yesterday. So that's I'm a little bit all over the place at the moment. So the first place we went to, where the airport was, is called Accra, and this is one of the churches in Accra. Okay, let me introduce you to some people in a Gay church. So this fella here, Brother Raphael, he accompanied us for the whole trip, and he is really, really cool. This is a gay church, and they have only been there. It's right next to where he lives, and they've only been having services since May. But these youths, this is his son, Prince. Like, they have really cool names there. They're all really fervent, and they do a bit of graphic design. Like, I help out with graphic design, so it really resonates with me. They have these little stickers that they put on. I didn't have time to take a photo. And they put it on buildings within the area, and it basically tells you to come to Jesus Church. It's like, but and I just think that's really cool, and they do that kind of stuff there as well. It's just these little small stickers. They're quite colourful, and then they just put them around the area. And the building is actually just this white tent. Sorry, I don't have it on my phone, so it's just this white tent. And they have speakers, and it's really loud. So when you speak, it projects outside as well, so people walking past can hear it. And they actually use the hymnal app. So they use you have the hymn book on your phone, and then you press the audio, and they sing along with that. And during the break, when we were having our lunch, they were playing Taiwanese hymns, and it was projecting outside to everyone. So when you walk past, for me, it was really surreal, because I was like, I am in Africa, in Ghana, and I was listening to Taiwanese music, like hymns, and I was like, I know this one. I listened to it in the car with my parents in the UK, and I'm in Ghana listening to it. But yeah, they really enjoy it, and it was just it was just really nice. This is Emmanuel, and they're all very fervent. They all work very hard, and they help out a lot in the NSSC. It's really nice to see when youths work together to build up the church, and they are so fervent, and they preach so much. And he is such a skinny, small man, but he has so much power to preach, and he literally does a lot of preaching, and that's how the church came to be. So this is David. Where is his wife? I think, oh yeah, his wife is here, Comfort, and this is David. And they have been coming to church for a year, and Raphael was the one to preach to them. And during NSSC, Comfort received the Holy Spirit in one of the prayers, and in that prayer she saw a vision, and she saw herself in the cemetery. So when she told that to the preacher said that, okay, then you need to basically, it's a sign from God saying that, because she was going to be baptized later on, she said, you need to repent and basically renew yourself. And then several days later, she received another vision, where she saw Jesus on the cross, being crucified on the cross. And then in that same prayer, she also was crucified on the cross. And she actually felt the pain of being crucified. So after the prayer, all I heard was just like this really deep cry. And this sister, Comfort, she was just limping. And then she was getting supported by like 2 or 3 of the members. And you could just see how much pain. It wasn't even real, but God let her feel like just a tiny bit of what the pain would be. Um, and then when she got baptized, she came out of the water and she was speaking in tongues. And I think these things just emphasize how we are the true church of God. And that when we are baptized, it's not a small thing. You are baptized into the true church. And also we need to make sure that we don't take baptism for granted, that we need to lead a new life and to constantly make sure that we're living our lives are pleasing to God. And this is her husband. Okay, she is 18 and he is 22, and he looks about 16, and they have like a little child. And I was, oh, and he is also like coming up to, I think he's like 52, but he looks like in his 30s. I don't know how they do it, but they all just look really young. And when we asked him, just before he got baptized, he was smiling so much. And then I asked him, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm so happy because I finally become a child of God." And that just made me feel so, because he truly understood what it means to be baptized in the true church, and he's been wanting it for so long. And then finally that day was when he became a child of God. And then afterwards, he was like constantly smiling and jumping like on the walls, and he would just laugh at everything. Yeah, very, very sweet. Okay, so, and this is his wife. She's very lovely. Can you go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so, sorry, I'm just going to talk through all the slides. There's no structure to it now. So this, Preacher Michael, we accompany Preacher Michael, and this is him carving a coconut that we ate, and then we used it to put our forks and knives in it. If you go on to the next slide. Yeah, look how cool that is. Yeah, it's so cool, right? And one thing that I really learned is about the produce, about God's creation. And for me, because I don't go traveling very often, there's a lot of questions I had and a lot of things that I didn't know. And I never knew that coconut could taste that good. In the UK, the coconuts are quite hard inside, quite flaky, but the coconuts there are very soft and jelly-like inside. And sometimes when I don't deal well with hot weather, so I was like sweating so much. It was so hot. And I really, really missed having a fridge. Yeah, because when I came back, I was, in order to drink the water, we didn't buy water, we boiled water. We got it from the tap and then boiled it. So when I came back and I ran out of water, I was thinking, man, I'm going to have to boil water, wait for it to cool down and drink it. So I really appreciate having cold water now. When you, like, just having things instantly is something that I really appreciate. But something else that I really appreciate is God's fruits. Like, when Preacher Michael would just knock on our door and say, watermelon time, or like coconut time, it's so, like, a coconut is like a natural bottle. If you cut it open and then you can just, and there's so much liquid in there and it's so refreshing. Me and Tina were so happy. And then watermelon was so refreshing. And the papayas are so good. And we had, basically you will not starve. You really will not starve because they'll just keep feeding you. And the members take really good care of you. Yeah, so God's creation is really, really, really cool. Um, and I also learned about cocoa beans. Yeah. Like, sorry. Okay, there's nothing more with that. Can you go on the next slide, please? Oh yes. So this is Raphael, and he's always looking for people to preach. So we were we were trying to exchange money, and he was, yeah. If you go on to the next slide, this is him preaching to one of his acquaintances that maybe he spoke to before, and he's just so, he preaches with his whole body, like, and he just like can give out quotations just like that, and he'll be like, turn to Hebrews chapter 4, Matthew chapter 28. So you can tell when someone preaches like for their life. You can tell because they're just so, it just comes out so naturally. And for him, he really knows what it means to be a servant of God and to be an active servant of God. Like, he said that it's kind of like a business. It's not a business, obviously. It's kind of like a business. Like, you need to save souls. That's your mentality. Like, God has given you this mission to save souls. So you really need to try your best. Yeah, if you go into the next slide. I finish at 1:45. Okay. Yes, this is lovely Ellen, and this is Farouk. So this is in Hohoi. And it's just really sweet because this little boy, he also came to NSSC. He's like 12 or 13, and his dad has passed away. I'm not sure what happened to his mum, but this this is just a church sister, and she's actually looking after him because there's no one else to look after him. And she also came to NSSC to help, and she is also part of church board. I think she helps with either treasure. She's the treasurer or helps out with sister fellowship. I don't know if that's part of church board, but when we asked her, she said yes. And he is a very, he was one of Tina's students, and she was just saying like how much of a good boy he was and how very well versed. And it just really touched me that we are truly one family, and even though they have no blood relation or anything like that, she took up the task to raise him, and to look after him and pay for him and everything. So yeah, just thought I would share that. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is Pando. It's spelled, it has a K at the front, so it's Kpando. And one of the things when it comes to pastoral work is that not only do you visit and talk to the members, it's kind of like a checkup. So Pandu's been having some problems. This church has been here for at least 20 years, this building, but they still haven't fully finished the building. On the side, the plastering is still unfinished, and it's not that they don't have money. It's because there's a worker in the church that has been misusing the money and also has been bullying the members there. And so during this time was quite a little bit intense because and you can, for preacher Michael, you can kind of tell when something is on his mind because he goes quite quiet during dinner time and he won't make any of his jokes. But so like it's not just like a worldly task. This is concerning salvation. This is concerning the church. This is our family. This is God's task for us. And basically to prove that it's been known for a while that he's been misusing money, but we went to some members to get accounts, to check the records, and then we also went to the bank to check the records. And when you calculate everything, you can see how much sometimes if you don't have the right heart to serve God, you can damage the church so much. And so, well, yes. So during this time, um, we confronted this brother, and so this brother is the RA, or was the RA, no, is the RA of the church board in Pando, but he has now been suspended from his work. And there was a meeting with the district and the GECB, which is kind of like the coordinating team in Ghana, and also with Preacher. We went in the meeting, but basically it was to kind of confront and to deal with it. And so now he has been suspended. But one thing that's really amazing is that God is always in authority and God knows all these things. It's not that God is just letting things happen, but God has his own time. But God is aware of everything. So there was a member, this old man, who is a member of this church, and he had when it came to the election of choosing the church board, and this brother, this RA, was elected. He said to the pastor in this church, who was looking after the church, he said, "Hey, why did we let this man become the RA?" And then so the pastor asked him, "Oh, why do you say that?" And I think the night before or sometime before he had a vision, and the vision is of he saw a mountain, and there was like a bus. I assume like an African bus, so like a little bit unsafe, but so the members were on the bus, and this RA worker was driving the bus, and no matter how much they tried, they couldn't ascend the hill, they couldn't ascend the mountain, so they were stuck. Everyone had to come out the bus and everything. So all the members are in the bus, and he is driving the bus, but they couldn't get up. So what does this dream mean? So it basically means that God, it's kind of like a warning to the church, and kind of like telling him that God knows that this worker is not sincere, and he, no matter if having this kind of worker lead the church will get you nowhere. If he was to continue to lead, then they wouldn't be able to ascend. I guess like when you're on top of the like mountain, that's where like the standard of God is as well. But he can't reach with him leading the church, they can't get up, and that affects the whole church as well. And also we went to visit a sister who last year stopped coming to church, and she said that she would consider coming back to church, but she didn't, so we went to revisit. And so Preacher Michael, he wasn't upset, but he did say like, "Oh, I'm a bit disappointed," because obviously you want your brothers and sisters to return back to God. And one of the reasons why, she had various reasons why she didn't come to church, but one of the fundamental reasons was because sometimes, well, when the workers are misusing God's money. So this RA was stealing the money from church, and when they are not doing according to God, then it discourages members and they don't come to church. But it's also what Preacher Michael said to her was that no matter what happens in church, no matter, like, the true church is the church that saves. Yes, there might be some workers that affect the church, but we have to be accountable for our own faith. So no matter what happens, no matter who is leading the church, we still need to remain in church, because at the end of the day, you can't say that, oh, God will judge this person, but God will also judge us because we're not in church. So we can't blame that person for our fall. Sorry, I don't think that made sense, but okay. Can you go on to the next slide? Oh yes, so this is basically that brick area is still unplastered, and this church has been here for 20 years, so um, the money goes, the money is misused. Yeah. Next slide, please. And this is the members. This is what it looks inside. I'm not very good at taking photos because I'm a bit afraid to go to the front and just take one of them. So this is kind of secret photos. Um, Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, I really thank God for co-workers. This is Tina, and also we in Ghana stayed in so many hotels. We were like hotel hopping, and we were treated very well. So, very rarely did I need to use a toilet in the a hole in the ground to go to the toilet. We had running water, we had flushable toilets, and we had very comfortable beds. And this is a hotel in KJB. And this hotel actually you can go out and they have orange trees and you can just pick it and eat it, which was really nice. And I actually learned a lot from my coworkers. From Preacher Michael, he shared so many testimonies, and whenever we would be eating, I think me and Tina bullied him a little bit, and we got him to share like every single testimony that he had under the sun, and to share about his life. We basically interviewed him, and but it's really really edifying, and also when it came to preaching as well. It's really rare to have this time with preachers where you can just on the go while you're preaching, and if something that you don't quite understand, you can go back and be like, so how would you answer this question, or like how would you go about this, and just listening to them preaching is so, it's like for me where I learned the most. So those questions that I had that I never knew that I had, not about faith, but in terms of how to answer them. And actually, a lot of my questions were answered. So I really thank God for this opportunity to work together with these members. And Tina would spend so much time preparing. It's really cute, and she tries really hard. But to echo what she said yesterday, we really need to rely on the Holy Spirit. Like we can prepare a lot, but actually, we both felt very unworthy and unable, but God always provides. And also, she is French speaking. So we went to Togo for 2 weeks, and they only speak Airway and French. So actually, for the majority of the trip, I was pretty useless. I don't think I did much, but I learned so much. But Tina was really, thank God that she was able to come, because she did a lot of preaching and she taught the kids in Togo doctrines, and she taught them songs, and you can tell that the kids really enjoy it because yeah, they just smile so much and they pay so much attention, and they're just so interactive. It's really really really, thank God. And I also use this as a promotional ad that for those French speaking or for those that can use languages, really utilize this gift that you have. Because for me, I felt a bit, yes, a bit useless because I didn't know, I couldn't speak French. Obviously, it's not a limitation and God can provide whatever the situation is. You can preach in English, but if God has given you the gift, and it is a gift, don't think of it as just like a natural thing. God has given you this gift, and I do encourage you to use it to serve God. So French-speaking people, go to Togo. Yes. And in Ghana, it's a little bit more advanced than in Kenya. In Kenya, there's not as much running water, and the toilets tend to be in the hole, a hole in the ground. And in Ghana, they have a lot of aircon, so they use electricity. They have electricity, they have running water, and they tend to have toilets. And you tend to stay in the hotels more because the churches don't have the facilities to house you. So if you're thinking about first trip Africa and you're a bit scared to face all the bugs, because there wasn't that many bugs, although I did get a few bites, but I think there were more like heat heat than anything else, then I would say Ghana is a pretty good first trip, because especially if you're scared about peeing in holes and stuff. So, next slide, please. Oh, so this is NSSC. Just to share a little bit about NSSC. So we were in a place called Apafru, and we've never had NSSC there before. But it was such a nice experience, and just to see so many little kiddies there. Oh, it went from the age of 8 to 8 plus. So there were mothers there with their babies in the senior class, and there was 4 classes, so it split to 8 to 10, 11 to 14, 15 to 17, and 18 plus. And my kids were the 15 to 17, and I taught them Sabbath. And at the beginning, I was a bit scared because there's so many kids there that you don't know. And also when I came to teaching my class, 15 to 17-year-olds are a little bit scary. So I just saw them as like a group of teenagers with a little bit moody and a bit disinterested, and I was quite scared of them. But over time, you realize how you start to see them as individuals, and you start to get to know their names, and you start to see their personalities and how sweet they are. And they really reminded me of the youths in the UK and my own RE class. And like what Jeffrey said, like when you pray, you close your eyes and you're just basically, we are one family, and it's just exactly the same. So I really enjoyed prayer sessions there, because it was just, the whole room was filled with praying in tongues, and it was so comforting. And also, the youths there face the same struggles, and they have the same attitude, they have the same heart. They're not all that different to us in the Western world. And one thing that I really learned to have was to have the heart of love. And I really, really wanted to teach. It's not that it wasn't just a task anymore. There was a desire to teach them the Word of God, and for them to remain in church. And I really hope that one day I can go back and like revisit them again. Oh, is there anything else? Next slide, please. Is that the last one? Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. That's just another picture. Preacher Michael's pretty submissive. I told him to do that. And he was like, yeah. Next slide. Is that the last one? Oh yes. I am a terrible photographer, as you can tell. All my photos are really rubbish. But yeah, this is Africa, and this is so beautiful, and I really recommend that you guys come. Next slide, please. Oh yes, this is really cool. So in where we had NSSC, can you see TJC? Yeah. Oh yes, look closely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they built it within the church. That was just a nice thing. So I have 10 minutes left. Is that the last one? Okay. I'm so sorry, guys. This is really unstructured. Do you guys have any questions? One thing that I did really take away was all the testimonies. There were so many testimonies, and it's not just from the African members. Preacher Michael shared so many testimonies to edify the members there, and each branch, they have their own troubles. So preacher would tailor his sermons to help them. So whether it be like they're a small church, like a gay, and they need to like to be encouraged to preach, or things like not being discouraged by the happenings in church. There was just so many testimonies. I want to share some, but don't. So there was some, I think Carmian shared it last year, where some members would, when they come to, when they first come to True Jesus Church, it's really amazing. And sometimes you get more visions when in Africa, is because people come to believe, and God is confirming to them that this is the true church of God. But for us, we already have the truth, and we're already all baptized. So things like visions aren't as necessary for us. So don't be discouraged if like we don't have visions today and things like that. So there's a worker called Noah who is now a TTP student. He is 49 years old, but when I first met him, I thought he was my age. So they look really young. Oh, maybe a bit older than me. And before he came to True Jesus Church, he oh yeah, Tina already spoke about him. He was already the head of various churches. So he's quite well known in the area. But his wife heard a voice telling them to go to True Jesus Church. And they were saying, why are you going to a church so far away when my true church is True Jesus Church? And also his daughter had that vision, and she just said to him, we need to go to True Jesus Church. So from then, he tried to preach to his church, but they wouldn't come. So he and his family came to True Jesus Church, and he is now a TTP student, and he's working from the bottom. Like he didn't come in and be like, oh, I should be a pastor like right now, or like try to do a lot for the church. He has a really humble heart. Oh, there was another testimony, but I have forgotten it. Sorry. I think there was. Yes. One thing that I took away was that not only that all these visions, the visions that we have in True Jesus Church, are very different to the signs from various other churches, other denominations. All these visions tell us that, like what Preacher FF says in his lessons, that this is the true church of God, and like God does, like Preacher Michael was saying, like God doesn't judge other churches, like he doesn't chasten other churches like he does with us. Like when you have like in some testimonies, like the testimony that I shared about the mountain, God judged that worker, and he doesn't do that with other churches because the other churches don't belong to him, but because he loves the True Jesus Church, and it is his own church, he will exercise judgment. So it's also a reminder for us to be faithful workers in church. So why isn't faithful workers? So one of the things that Preacher Michael shared a lot in his sermons was Luke chapter 12, where it talks about the faithful and wise worker of God. And this is something that we need to be until the end. So when God, because it's okay to say that you're a faithful and wise worker now, but the true test is whether you will stand to be a faithful and wise worker to the very end. And for in Africa, like in various places, we might have different pressures or different temptations. So for us, money might not be a major thing because we have it, but in Africa, a lot of a lot of workers and even pastors fall to money, just like that RA worker, because they don't have it. So Satan will use this even more to test them. So don't be discouraged to think that, oh, why is there so many workers um, who sound like they're stealing from church? But it's because Satan is working and using that as like the main tool to bring down the workers of God. While maybe in the UK it might be more about our pride or submission to the truth. Because in Africa they have such simple faith. They will, if you preach to them and it's in the Bible, then they will believe. But when it comes to money and daily living, that's when there may be more of pressure. So for us, no matter what our temptation is, that we must until the end be faithful and wise workers of God. And in the end, God will be the one to tell us that, oh, you are Nathaniel, you are my faithful worker of God. Or Jackie, you are my faithful worker. So that's all I have to say. Sorry, it's very disorganized. I said that about 1,000,000 times, but I really do apologize. So, but still thank God. And we'll end with a prayer. In the name of Jesus All right.